Delmarva Today with Don Rush.
Salisbury Police Chief retires and the Wicomico County Council rejects Dan Cox to become special counsel. What's the future going to look like for Salisbury University? We have an exclusive interview with the president, Carolyn Lepre. Then Ocean City Film Festival gets underway. Host Brian Russo talks with John Waters about his personal journey and the industry. Welcome to Delmarva Today. This is Don Rush. In our studio this afternoon is Greg Bassett. He's editor and general manager for the Salisbury Independent. Welcome to the program.
Hey, Don.
So, Greg, I want to start with the Wicomico County Council's rejection of Dan Cox as a special counsel. I mean, he was the GOP gubernatorial candidate in Maryland, was defeated by Governor Wes Moore in the general election. And there were a lot of questions surrounding County Executive Julie Giordano's effort to appoint him to the position. Here's some of what she said during the public comments.
I am not, as county executive, getting into the business of hiring, firing, stiff-arming, blackballing, or not hiring or appointing anyone based on their political views or because they lost an election. Putting yourself out there as a candidate, I don't care what side of the aisle you fall on, I give you the utmost respect. To even suggest that I do that is completely inappropriate. But if we want to go down the political rabbit hole, Dan Cox won this county as a Republican candidate overwhelmingly in the primary, and he won this county along with Dorchester, Somerset, Worcester, and 10 more in the general election. That means that the majority of voters in Wicomico County trusted Dan Cox enough to be their governor, including our Sheriff Mike Lewis, and I will assume 5 out of 7, I don't want to make assumptions, but 5 out of 7 members. And additionally, our Congressman Andy Harris. So I think that he can handle 5% of our legal work that has nothing to do with politics.
So, Greg, what are we to make of this appointment? And these appointments don't exist in a political vacuum.
Yeah, it's the strangest exercise that I've ever been part of as a reporter to have to witness. And a lot of the contradictions in the argument. First, let me just say it was a work session. So, yeah, there was a vote, but it was a consensus to move forward with this nomination. And the council in their questioning made it clear that their concerns were that Dan Cox perhaps wasn't as qualified as other available attorneys for the kind of work that the county needs in this. So what you have in with the current county attorney situation, we've got an excellent, I believe, county attorney based on his reputation, Paul Wilbur. He can handle pretty much everything that needs to be done. But what they will do from time to time is hire an outside counsel to delve into bigger issues like a human resources issue, a collective bargaining issue. And Kevin Karpinski has been the lawyer for the county since Bob Culver was the county executive way back 9 years ago. So Karpinski was terminated by Julie Giordano, and she wanted to replace him with Dan Cox. And if you look at Dan Cox's workload, he's basically, based on what you see from his curriculum vitae, he is a lawyer for people who are he's not a defense lawyer as much as he is a lawyer for people who are suing someone else. So he just doesn't seem to have the resume or the skills for this job. And the council made that a point. Now, the political stuff is all there. She's saying it should not be political, but then she says it is political. There was a lot of back and forth about that. But there were just questions about whether Dan Cox was the kind of guy that you want to represent Wicomico County in a court situation, usually in a very difficult court situation in these negotiations and other things. Dan Cox has a full-time job as a chief of staff to a state senator in Pennsylvania. And yes, he has a controversial background in terms of his politics. He lost the election by 30 points, 40 points in the state. He's very conservative. A lot of the Republicans disowned him in the campaign statewide. So there was a concern about this, and it seemed like of all the people you could come up with for this job, perhaps Dan Cox wasn't the best choice.
What does that say about her relationship then with the county council?
Yeah, and this has been sort of systematic throughout since she's been there, where it just feels like the groundwork is not being laid on a lot of these things so that the tensions spill out in public. As a reporter, I love that, but in terms of good government and how the reputation of the county, that is a concern. So rather than just say what you want to do and confront the people who have to approve it, do you do the background lobbying? Do you make sure you have your votes lined up before you take it before the group? She's done that with some issues. With some other issues, that seems to have not been done. She's learning the job. She's new in this, so there's a lot of that. But there's certainly a strident attitude about, I am the county executive and this is what I want and give it to me. And we've seen that with every county executive that we've ever had. And so it's not unique to her, but it's certainly an issue on this case.
Also want to turn to Salisbury Police Chief Barbara Duncan. She has announced that she is retired. I think she was the first woman to actually occupy the job. What do we make of this? Was it a surprise? And what do you think her legacy is?
It wasn't. Barbara Duncan is someone who's gone through some personal stuff in recent years. Her husband passed away unexpectedly. She's been under a lot of stress. There was the evidence room situation. Mayor Jake Day, a great proponent of hers, of course, has left city government for state government. Barbara the chief is 57 years old, so it's a time in her career where she might want to look at doing something else. Her children, her young men are teenagers and a little bit older than teenagers, so it's what we used to call in the parenting business a time of hard parenting. So she's got that going on. She's leaving in June, so it was a surprise, but it wasn't a surprise. You've got a new mayor, you've got lots of changes coming with the next election, so it might be a good time for Barbara Duncan to do something else.
The other side of the city, of course, is that Megan Alden been appointed to fill up his Jack Heasol's seat. What do we expect from her? Is it going to change? Do you think anything on the council?
What just dawned on me yesterday, I don't know why I didn't think of this before. The county council now is all female. Of the 5 members, four females and 1 male. Mirabota, the council president.
Right.
I don't know.
City council.
I don't know that that's ever happened ever in any municipality that I've ever covered. I can't remember that ever happening. So that's a unique situation that we'll look at. Megan became known. She's been active in Democratic circles, in environmental groups, sustainability groups for a long time. She's 30 years old. She's very young, but she's known around town. She's a member of the Democratic Central Committee. She's involved in that. She ran for county council at large in the last election. She did not win, but she lives in Jack Heath's district. Jack was appointed mayor, which allowed an opening. Council interviewed, I think, 4 applicants. They narrowed it down to 4. Those interviews were conducted in private, which is something that I'm opposed to in terms of open press. And Megan was the unanimous choice, so she was sworn in on Tuesday. She's one of those people who really cares, that she shows up for things. She's very involved. She's very smart, and I think she's going to fit in just fine.
The other thing, by the way, I noticed is that the city headquarters, they're moving to the old fire station headquarters. One of the questions I have is there enough room?
Yeah, they're only going to move some offices in there. The visitor center is going to go from the North Division place where it is now in the old PNC Bank into there, and they're going to have take some offices upstairs as well. They're busting at the seams in the government office building, and they always have been. So the city has had offices kind of all over town. They've got the big center over on Lake Street where the public works people are, and some of those areas. But they have needed something. Now, legally, technically, they are tenants in the government office building. So they pay, I think it's $1 a year rent to the county to be there. The county would love for the city to be out of that building. They've never really liked having them in there. And I think long term, there's going to have to be a city hall placed somewhere. But this will relieve some of that pressure. I was expecting controversy, and I have not heard it yet because, of course, the city did own that property. They sold it to the developer. It was turned into an entertainment venue. That failed. Then the Daily Times Delmarva Now went in there with a 7-year lease. That lease came to an end. They decided not to renew. So the building was on the market. Now the city's going to go back and lease it. So it's a property that the city used to own. And now they're going to be paying rent. And I've got the numbers in the paper, but I can't remember off the top of my head how much they're paying. But it is a lease. It's a lot of money. I think it's $100,000 for the first year, that lease for the first year I think is more than they sold the building for to Gillis Gilkerson at the time. So I expected some controversy, but at the same time, in terms of the logistics for the city, it makes perfect sense to have the visitor center there and to have city offices there across from the public library, and the construction that's going to go there at Lot 1. Parking garage. It's just the perfect location for the city to be. So I'm hoping people don't have too much problem with it, but they might.
Right. Finally, so Every Saturday, I guess it is, where you drive by Lot 10, and I think there's a swap meet or whatever. What's going on with that? And I guess there's going to be a hotel projected. Any complaints about that?
Yeah, going back 50 years, the city has taken over troubled properties, and torn down structures that were there, converted them into parking lots until the right developer came along or the right opportunity came along. And Lot 10 on Route 13 is just another one of those. Lot 13 in Calvert Street is another one of those. So now with the economy and the way it is, Mentis Holding Group, which is the people who have built the high-rise, the Ross in town, they were able to purchase that property from the city. They want to put a hotel conference center there. One of the economic analysis of our town is that we do not have nice hotel space, enough nice hotel space and conference center space in town, certainly in downtown. So it makes sense in terms of business. It could be successful. But this week on my website, tremendous traffic on this story, the biggest story we've had this year except for the Ward Foundation situation. People are very concerned about parking going away. But the words that have always been in my head have been Jake Day, our former mayor, used to say, well, let's go to visit Salisbury because they've got great parking. That's not how people think. They go to Salisbury because there's great things to do downtown and they find parking. And that parking garage has a lot of space. There will be parking as part of this hotel conference center thing, just as there's parking with the Ross. There's parking, that's built into everything that's being done. Parking is not going to be an issue, but there's a big concern that with that lot gone, there won't be parking anymore. I just feel like if you look at the plans and you look at it in a reality mode, parking will be fine in downtown Salisbury. And this, if it gets built, and I've learned forever, you can't trust developers when they say they're going to build stuff. Things go wrong, and what they build isn't always what they proposed, and the money doesn't come together. The partners fall apart. So you can never assume anything until the shovel's in the ground, and even then, you never know what's going to happen. But if this happens in the way the plans are designed, it's going to be a great benefit for downtown.
We've been speaking with Greg Bassett. He's editor and general manager of the Salisbury Independent. Appreciate you stopping by and chatting with us.
Thanks, Don.
You're listening to Delmarva Today. This is Don Rush.
Delmarva Today with Don Rush.